Hello, my name is Dr. Wexler. I was noticing that you looked a little uncomfortable when I wasn't speaking. That's how people feel when they're with somebody who has a speech problem, a stuttering problem. You can't get out those words. My children used to be very uncomfortable. I couldn't say my name. Waiters, when we went to the restaurant, they were uncomfortable. I couldn't say what I wanted. Right now, as of last Saturday, I turned 72. I'm probably one of the oldest TED talkers. And I've had a long life. I've done many, many things. I've been through wars. I've seen so many changes. I've raised children, have a family. I've done research work. I've done clinical work. I've done so many things, and yet I am inadequate. That feeling of being inadequate comes from the stuttering as a child. It's a trauma. You can't speak. Imagine that, right? You're running around and you can't do it. Your only choice is not to talk. And that's really impossible. How many people have seen the movie The King's Speech? Oh, good. Then you know a little bit about stuttering. 25% of children, when they're very young, preschool, have a hard time saying words, and they have primary stuttering. That's relatively normal. 5%, though, become self-conscious. They try not to stutter, and damn it, that's what makes them into a stutterer. The self-consciousness and not trying not to stutter, that's it. And now you're caught. It's a lifelong thing. It's almost impossible to get through it. Want to read you a little quote? Finding meaning in trauma is one of the key elements of well-being. I'd like to do a little exercise with you. I'd like you to turn to your neighbor, and I would like you to say something that you feel as something is an inadequacy. Just a couple moments, and you can even use this. You know, you can say what you are not. Go ahead, and then we're going to change. Take a minute, and then we'll reverse it. Go ahead. Now change. Okay. Thank you. Now, I would like to I would like to check with you. How many of you felt some relief when you did that? Raise your hand. A couple. How many felt uncomfortable? I have a few more. Well, let me just say, those who felt neither, I'm a psychologist, and you can talk to me later. Let me talk about conversion. This is critical. We heard from our prior speaker, two back, about positive psychology and needing to have the negative to get to the positive. Well, let me take you through some very personal experiences to try to illuminate that. And the ideas that we have, it's a three-stage process. Acknowledging the inadequacy, engaging the challenge, and then completion. When I was in high school, I was turning 16, and I was told I was going to be expelled in the next month because I had cut classes, I had not attended school much of the time, I had a lot of courses. And they said, look, you're 16, you're gone. Of course, what I had done with this stuttering problem, I took a negative path. I went to the path of delinquency. I was in trouble. I was trying to get away from the problem. I didn't know really what else to do. But this warning scared me a lot. So I went down to the bedroom downstairs. You know, in the house I lived in, the kids would move to the lower floor, kind of a basement apartment, and then they would leave. So I went down to my place down there, closed the window shades, darkened the room, sat with piles of textbooks. And I worked like I never worked before in my life. It was incredible. I just never did that. And it worked. I passed the exams. There was a major test and a statewide test. I did extremely well. They even put me back into the academic program. And I graduated, but it took me 5 years. I had to go an extra year to high school. I was a 5-year man. Did postgraduate work at that point. Went on to college and went on to get a PhD. Now, that experience, take a look at that experience. I was in trouble. Comes from that vulnerability, comes from the inadequacy, and yet what I had to do, from being a bad student, I had to become a good student. From in the inadequacy was a sort of a navigation. It gave a kind of direction. And I became a good student. That became a strength. Still had a terrible speech problem, loads of other problems, but I could be a good student. So went off to college and up to Boston, Emerson College, and my speech problem was useful there. That college, I majored in speech therapy, so they kind of liked me. It was, you know, plus, right? Had a girlfriend, though, for some years before in high school, and she came up to visit me, and this was toward the end of my first year of a glorious year. It was one of the best years of my life. I was flying. I was in college. I was free. Even got rid of my speech problem for a little while. She came up, and how many people know that town, Boston? Raise your hand. And the Commons, you know, those beautiful Commons right downtown? There used to be a hotel, Vendome. It's no longer there. We went to that hotel. We had make-believe marriage rings, and we never saw those Commons. We stayed the time in the hotel, and we had a marvelous time. It was so wonderful. Incredible, actually. A month later, I find out she's pregnant. Now what? So there goes my college, back home to that little basement room, in fact. We had to live down there for a little while. Got married within 2 years, 21. I think a lot of you may be close to 21, at least, you know, good number, right? Imagine this, 21, 2 children, working full-time, learning to be a father, and going to college at night, part-time. Kind of a crummy college, actually. Now, here's something magical. When you have children, this is a forecast. I actually make this as a recommendation to people. Have children. Even if it's under not the best conditions, they bring out love. You really want to be a good parent. I mean, you have a kind of choice, though. You can leave, run away, or stay and do something. So engaging that challenge is critical. Now, that looks like a catastrophe, right? If that happened to you, right? Geez, it's a catastrophe. Turned out, no. It was just the reverse of a catastrophe. It put me under such horrendous, challenging conditions that I learned how to be a terrific worker. I learned things that I would never have learned. I worked so hard. I had to get such tolerance, and I still had a speech problem, but I developed a lot of other things because of the necessity to meet that challenge, engaging the challenge. So having vulnerabilities can be a real unknown potency. It's a fuel. It's something that's not recognized. If you go there, and it can even tell you what to do. Do what you're feeling bad about. Do the flip side. Now, that doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to change and pivot. It's not black and white, but it sure is a direction. My work, getting a PhD, now I'm a psychologist, right? So I chose to work in the field of substance abuse and then later criminal justice and prisons. In fact, I was drawn to these populations, I think, because of my problem. Because of the pain in my life, I could see their pain. From my inadequacy, I could appreciate theirs. They weren't patients to me. They were people. So I got very enthralled with the therapeutic community, which is a form of a self-help. It's not quite positive psychology, but it has certain parts of that where you take the problem or the inadequacy and you make it into a solution. You work on that problem. So, for example, in a 12-step program, right, alcoholism, you walk in. First thing you do to start that process is you admit, I'm an alcoholic. Admit it. And then you're on the move. You've got to the pain, to the problem. You didn't run away. You accepted it. And now you have the challenge to be doing something about it. And lo and behold, how does that whole thing work? It's not just stopping using something. You can stop like that. You know, it's possible. You just don't do it, right? But you got to change your whole life. You got to be a decent human being. You got to be a good family person. You have to be good at your work. That's really about the problems. So self-help and therapeutic communities, that was my work. I want to talk about completion. I'm a psychologist, and I've seen a lot of people over the years, patients, clients, and people in their later years, when they're not that happy or positive, a lot of times, because they have incompletions. They quit something. They let something go. Something got too difficult, and they made an excuse, or they kind of, what else could I do? She got pregnant, right? What else could I possibly do? Well, these people wind up in negative psychology. They're depressed. They have anxiety. They're not happy, and that's important to know that. In my work as a researcher, I worked researching the therapeutic community and helping to get them into prisons. And to do that is very hard. You got to write a big grant. It takes 5 years to do a study like that. You got to write it. You got to put it in place. People have to go through the program, leave the program, and have time at risk. I want to show you a completion. That's a completion. This is data from one of my major studies in California in the therapeutic community in prison. I want you to look at the left. The controls you can see, and then the intent to treat, that's the program, everyone who comes into the program. Pretty good difference. 50% for controls, that's return after 1 year, return to prison. Recidivism, that's the main variable. Intent to treat, 34, pretty darn good. But look way to the right. Look at the lowest number, under 10, 8%. I always stutter on that, and my children know it, and they're watching me right now, and I did it, right? But that was a wow kind of finding. The whole thing was a wow finding. Because of these findings and replication of others, these programs have been spread throughout the country. And it's helped tens of thousands of people by giving them a chance. Now, even more important, this is me, of course, at the program in Donovan Prison, and John. John, this was a couple years back. He went through, put his life, he came out, went back with his family. He had some school and training. He is now a counselor in a program and becoming a very good dad. And that is what it's really all about. Now, what about you? You poor people. Jesus, I'm reading the newspaper about you guys, the millennials, they're down the toilet, the economy, $100,000 loans. You get a $20,000 job when you leave here. How are you going to do it? What's going to happen to you? It's horrible. Employment, income, debt, mobility. You got to go home to your mother's house and live downstairs in that same basement. It sounds sort of familiar, right? Well, the real news, of course, is that you're there with me. You're in the same opportunity that was mine. You have trouble. And that, I think, is an important part of the meaning of life, is trouble and responding to that trouble, accepting that trouble. If you don't have trouble, if you don't struggle, you don't got that much life in a way. You don't learn as much as you might. Real emotional learning. A couple of takeaways. One is convert inadequacy into power. In fact, it comes from the difficulty can fuel that power and tell you where to go in terms of maybe what you want to commit yourself to work on as a career. If you find something that's painful or in your world that you want to make a change and a difference, that can create your whole career or an entrepreneurial project these days, and quite useful. Welcome the challenges, complete what you start, and vulnerability is not a weakness but an opportunity. I want to say a couple more words about vulnerability. Vulnerability, if you talk to people about it, if you connect on vulnerability, you get closer. The emotional richness of your relationships is many times in relationship to how much you can talk about what you care about and what your vulnerability is. That takes us to the call to action. I have a question you might raise. This is a question for you. What inadequacy have you put aside that is an opportunity for challenge and growth? And here's what I suggest, and I really hope that you will do it. Think about this question, and when you go home later, tonight, you have a partner or a friend, or you can call somebody, talk about this. This is connecting on being vulnerable. But it's looking in places where you may not have looked, and you may discover things that you didn't quite know because you put away, and it may give you new reasons to be doing things. This is my family. My kid said, Dad, keep yourself together, right? This is my family. This is a wedding picture. In the middle is Josh and his beautiful wife, Elizabeth. They're, in fact, in the back row. Josh is an entrepreneur here in New York. Danny, to the left, is one of my first children. He's a lawyer in California. That's his daughter, Emma Rose, my granddaughter. Behind there is Karen. Karen and Dan. It's my heart, as are the rest of my kids. Move to the right. Who's that tall guy? Jordan. Jordan is an entrepreneur in China. He just came back the other day, partly to come to this presentation. And he's right here, and he was real helpful. Then, of course, you see me. I'm not real tall in this group. If you notice, I'm standing on something. And next to me, the woman in red, Ellen McGrath, is the love of my life. They said it couldn't be done. Well, it's been done, and I want to say to you, my name is Harry Wexler, and I'm a stutterer. Thank you.